Joe, shout out to you for covering the trial. I thought about it, but I was so busy. But I'm glad you covered it. Someone as based as I am, I will say. So people had a based coverage of the Kari Lake trial. I did stay up and watch all of Richard Barris's testimony.
Oh, did you?
And I watched as well part of the closing arguments.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to really get your take on the trial as a whole, and then I do want to get into Richard Barris because I've been talking about something here, and I want to get your take on it as well. But just as a whole, like let's pull back and for a second, let's talk about the trial as a whole.
Trial as a whole. Okay, so first and foremost, it's a miracle it happened because these trials never happen. So
yes,
we shouldn't brush past that. It's a big deal that it made it to trial. Usually these things are dismissed before it gets to trial, so it survived summary judgment. Kudos to the judge for that. I know Robert Barnes makes the point that if the judge was really interested in justice, he would have compelled signature verification and would have left that issue open.
Now, we'll say Barnes takes some very strong takes in terms of like things like the requirements, things like the burden of proof. Like he does push it. And by the way, I said this on my stream the other day. Barnes knows more about constitutional law than I do. So I'm like, I would bend the knee to him.
But this is a state issue, not a federal issue.
Well, yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So like, I don't know how much you know about Arizona's state constitution, but yeah, I mean, could that have been an added place? Okay, fine, that's true. How many judges would take this case? Because I'll tell you right now, I can think about 50 who said no in 2020. That they're like laches, mootness, all these other ridiculous things that they just didn't want to hear any of these cases. And this judge basically said, you know what, I'll give you your day in court. And basically told the lawyers what they should focus in on. By watching this trial, I saw that, I'll tell you this, plaintiff's counsel, they had two guys, they had Olson and Blem. Olson was, I would say, on a scale of 1 to 10 as a litigator, I would say 7.5, 8. Blem was a walking disaster. He's pacing all over the place. His questions were very erratic. Even when he had his own witnesses up there, it seemed like he was fighting his own witnesses half the time.
He was fighting everybody, I feel like.
And had all sorts of snark, which was irritating the judge. He was just a disaster.
What was the female's name for the state?
Heather Honey? Are you talking about?
Her vocal fry was bothering me. Wait.
Are you talking about for the state? You're saying the attorney for the state that was on election day? Are you the one on election day?
The day, like oh my god, I'm bad at math. Like lawyers are bad at math. I'm using a calculator. I'm like,
we don't understand numbers.
I'm like, seriously, like this is what you throw out there.
Can we talk about this whole thing? Because I'm telling you now.
Which thing?
There's a famous thing. Lawyers are bad at math.
Let's talk about it. It actually annoyed me. It actually fucking annoyed me.
I hear a lot of lawyers say this crap, or a lot of people, like, whenever they excuse themselves, lawyers are notoriously bad at math. I think she was the phrase she used, notoriously bad at math.
Notorious bad at math.
I want to tell you something. That's crap. What happens is this. There's a few factors that you need to understand when it comes to lawyers and math, okay? First of all, when people hear someone's a lawyer, they expect you to be smarter than the average bear. There's an expectation that you are going to be smarter than the average bear. Yeah, exactly.
Generally, right?
Yes. So if you have average math, everyone's like, wow, that's so disappointing that this guy couldn't multiply in his head 4 figures by 3 figures, and he had to sit there thinking he got the numbers wrong. Wow, lawyers so bad at math. You guys suck at math. You can't figure out how to subtract how to subtract like 6 from 13. You're screwed. Like it's like, just stop it. We're not terrible. There's no thing about lawyers being bad at math. It's just the expectation is that, like, we should be able to be figuring out derivatives, and when you can't, or if you get your percentages like slightly off. And the other thing is, a lot of times when we're addressing math, we're doing it under the gun. It's like off the top of my head, okay, I'm dealing with like 16 other things pounding through. Is this person committing hearsay? What's happening there? And I'm asking a question, and I'll throw a number out that's like, that I transpose digits or something like that. And everyone's like, oh yeah. So what's the excuse? The excuse that people, lawyers, we're not math people. It's stupid. It's such a lie. It's an outright lie. I'll tell you right now, lawyers, I'm sure, are better. If you look at a demographic of any group of people, outside of, people who are in the STEM fields, perhaps, I'm sure lawyers are probably better as a group at math than probably any other profession. Unless that number might have come down because over the last 30 years, there's been a very significant influx of female attorneys. So that might have changed.
Yes, that is very
shift.
true. No, but that is a base take from you. See, Joe Neiman, who tried to shame me for my workplace segregation, is like, yo, there's been more women and women about it. Math. Oh,
that's true. Everyone knows that.
True. It's statistically true. It's like we're just talking statistics, and people get butthurt over it. They're like, oh no, oh my God. And I talked about this with Megan Fox the other day. I said, Megan, when I say women are better at detecting lies, everybody nods their head. They go, oh yeah, men. Oh yeah, they're so good. They'll tell if you're lying. Women know, we know. But then when I say you're also better at lying, they go, oh. I'm like, well, it's the same coin, right? It's the other side of the coin. You have strengths and weaknesses, and some things you're better at, some things you're not better at.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. But I want to get in. So I want to get into this because I don't want to push it too long. But what do you think about Richard Barris's testimony? Because he's a buddy of yours. I would love to have him on my channel. I haven't on my channel, but
he's great.
I think I said as a witness, I think he was maybe a 7 or 8 out of 10. He did very good. He did a little bit with the speed and going a little too fast. But other than that,
I think he felt pressured to do that. In fairness to him, he felt pressured to do that because the Kari Lake was up against the clock, and he was the last witness, and he didn't want to eat up all of her clock. So I think he slowed down when he was being cross-examined because he knew he's not eating Kari Lake's clock. I think he was intentionally trying to avoid eating her clock, which is why he was talking as quickly as he was.
That's a good point.
So
it's a very good point.
But I'll tell you, I thought he was compelling. I thought that he did everything possible for him to do, but I think there was a shortcoming. Not because of anything about him or his insight or anything like that. In fact, some of the things he did, and I was explaining while I was watching him why I liked his testimony. Because certain times he's like, he admitted that, like, I could have looked at the numbers this way, but I don't think that's a fair way. Like he didn't. It was clear he was not looking to overinflate the numbers. He's like, this is just what the numbers show. And yeah, I could have looked at it from this perspective, but I didn't because that would be an unreasonable interpretation. But one could look at it from that and take it that Kari Lake would have won by like 30,000 if you know what I'm saying. Like he wasn't trying to inflate the numbers. And I think that he displayed a great deal of credibility. But there is a problem. There were 2 problems with his testimony that I don't know if Kari Lake can get around this. And that is, so he wasn't hired to do this for her. No one knew on November 8th, November 9th, whatever the election day was. Nobody knew which information one day, 2 months later, or a month, 6 weeks later, is going to be, that's the focus, what it has to be on. So in order to win this trial, Kari Lake has to show 2 things. First, that there was malfeasance, not misfeasance.
Yes. Specific, right? Specific to a person, meaning, right?
And the different, well, not specific to a person necessarily, but the point is that the defendants were intentionally doing bad things, malfeasance, not misfeasance, which is negligence. It's not that they're just
right, but
up.
There's a specific intent.
Yes, you have to be
somebody.
Correct.
And here's the point, Joe. Somebody or some group of people has to form that specific intent.
Right. And even if you can't identify whether it was Katie Hobbs herself or whoever it is, but that if you can detect that there must have been intent behind the activity, the bad activity, rather than just being a screw up, and that then you have to show that there is this intent, and then the results of that action of the intent have to be enough to make up the margin. So what Richard Barris, when he's taking this information down all the way back in November, they don't know, first of all, anything about this. He's not trying to prepare like, oh, one day I'm going to be testifying. I need to be focusing on this and ask questions to sort of parse out the people who are being, who are being shunted away and are turned away because of reason X versus Y versus Z. It's just he's looking overall. What are what percentage of people are not coming back now because there are problems? And the court, when they give this decision on summary judgment, they basically said there's only 2 issues that we're going to look at, and these 2 issues have to be the ones that tie in to establish that was the difference in 17,117 votes is because of these 2 reasons. So when he's testifying, he's like, look, I can tell you pretty definitively that if there was not this voter depression because of all the mistakes, that he's like, Kari Lake wins this election. That's what he basically said. He said, statistically, it could be maybe Katie Hobbs would have held up by up to 2,000. Chances are somewhere between Katie Hobbs winning by 2,000 to Kari Lake winning by 4,000. But definitely the whole election is being contested. If not for all of these things that suppress the vote, all these problems.
Man, and that's the other thing too, Joe. We got to hear those words. Like, we got to hear in the trial them using the words that we can't use on YouTube. And
I've been using them.
I was sitting there like, is Joe going to catch a strike for just saying the word, for repeating the word, right? I mean, we had so many good comments like about gaslighting people, about like the American public. I'm like, this message, because here's the thing, Joe. I think it's a win regardless. This is my position. But I think because, like you said, it was televised and we were able to have the fucking discussion. Because literally, we're at the point where having the discussion is controversial. And let me say this too. I was watching the just the unfiltered stream, which was, you know, from the local news channel or whatever. But man, it was nothing but just people screaming at each other in the chat. You know, either Kari Lake wins or Kari Lake loses or Kari Lake is a fraud or Kari Lake is great. I mean, it was just people totally fixed in on this, which is why we need to have these conversations. We have to have these conversations.
I'll just divert for a second and tell you that of late, you know that word that rhymes with broad, like a broad-shouldered person, right?
Yes.
The word that rhymes with broad, right?
Yes.
And people who have, people who use Viagra, they're very firm, or they're very solid erections. So when we're talking, so I have been using that phrase on my stream. I won't use it on yours because I don't want to, put you in any.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, and we all know what gets channels in trouble, Joe. We've both gotten in trouble because we're speaking facts and speaking the truth. Like we have both gotten in trouble for this, and I'm on one strike right now.
That's why. Look, That's why I would be rude for me to just assume it's okay for me to say it on your channel. Yeah, you of course, but and personally, my issues with YouTube have related to certain treatments of certain health things. That's where I've had my issues, where I got my first warning, and then I got a strike related to that whole issue, not related to things about guys and and how many inches they are. So, or that's the way an Asian would say it, right?
Yes. Oh yeah. Speaking of which, speaking of Asians, somebody got me good with the memes. Because I look like a Bond villain today. So apparently I am.
I love it. Asian finger.
Yes, I like it. It's very good, guys. Thank you. See, this is what I love. I love this shit. This is good. This is good.
And I have the hat that makes me Odd Job. So
yes.
I still remember the name.
No,
right? It's a great name.
Comment. No comment. All right. He's got more than one. He's got more than one hat. He takes off the bowler and then he throws the yarmulke.
Yes.
It's got the yarmulke's like a ninja star.
So where was it? So I'll tell you, on my channel, I have been using that phrase, and I specifically have been addressing YouTube, and I'd be like, look, you need to allow us to have this conversation. And one of the things I tell my chat, and I say repeatedly, is the reason we're not supposed to talk about this, the purported reason we're not supposed to talk about this, is that if people talk about it, supposedly that disenfranchises people from going out and voting. And what I say
which is just fucking weird and odd.
I say just the opposite. And this is when I bring it up, I say, a lot of people are afraid to say this phrase on YouTube because they're afraid that, YouTube will just knee-jerk reaction and boot you for a week and you're screwed. So what I'm telling you, YouTube, is that is not a healthy approach. And I am going to use that phrase. And then I would use that phrase. And I'd say the reason I'm using this phrase is because we need to have healthy dialogue. And there's two things we need to understand about this. One is that if you're of the camp that you think this is a legitimate concern, if you really believe that there is blank blank, in that case, you should be going out to the polls and voting your butt off. You should be telling your friends and family that, because if we don't turn out our numbers and make the election close, nobody's looking. If the final results are 55-45 or 60-40 or 70-30, no one cares because it's too far away and no one's looking. If you want to have any sort of integrity, you think that you have concerns in this arena, you should be going out and making sure you're casting your ballot, make sure it gets in there, and be telling everyone go vote, go vote, go vote. And I said the second thing is that if we cannot have this conversation in good faith and tell our viewers, look, people have concerns in this arena, and this is what they're thinking. If I get shut down for saying that, all YouTube does is it just confirms those suspicions. It makes people feel that those suspicions are validated, and that's why they don't want us talking about it, and that's why they're afraid of it. So I'm urging you, I would say, like, I'm looking at the camera, I'd be like, Susan, I'm urging you to recognize
Susan.
These are important conversations. These are dialogues we need to have. And at the same time, that doesn't mean that I'm telling people not to vote. Quite the contrary. That if you're in the camp that you have concerns in this arena, you must vote. And
you must vote.
You're an idiot if you don't.
Have to.
Yeah.
We have to vote, because that's the only way we're going to change this thing. And that's the only way we're going to fix the system, like we did in the States where they fixed the system, like in Florida, right?
If
we're not.
Kari Lake loses by 100,000, if she lost by 100,000, no one's looking at this. No one is looking at this.
No. It's only when it comes close.
Yeah.
Only when it comes close. So, and one thing, we may have our direct line to Susan. We may know who to pass it to get it to Susan.
What do you mean? I don't know. What are you talking about?
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. You have no idea. You have no idea.
What are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Nothing. Yeah, no idea at all. Speaking of something